So very welcome, everybody of you, to today's webinar. And today, as you have already read the title, we'll be trying to discuss things about formulating research questions, and designing your research framework. So what I would like to talk about today is actually that we do understand that those two things are extremely strongly linked, and that we have to think about that, how we, should I say, translate our research questions into the research framework, or that is extremely important. And I hope you have already thought about it, you have done about it, and probably you have already completed everything, and today will be just a discussion about that, what you have kind of done. So generally what we are trying to learn or discuss or present today is, as I have already mentioned, that we will understand that the importance of research question and research framework, because those two things are definitely defining actually the path, how we actually go forward. I guess that's really totally clear for us, because based on the research question, as I'll be talking, we are defining what we are trying to do. And after we have translated that into the framework, that is now kind of almost the last slide. Now we are informing actually our methodology as well. So that is why I put here in defining the path for the entire research process. That's why it is extremely important that we kind of develop a research question which is clear, straightforward, complex enough in order to guide our research. And I'll try to talk a little bit about today how to define, how to actually write down a nice, good research question. And at the end, we'll be trying actually to address the question, how to align them and how we can actually create upon the research question, research framework, which will be kind of, as I said, be the next stage toward defining our methodology. The few questions, as I usually start, is, have you formulated your research questions? Have you? I hope the majority has. I don't know how far you are actually with your research yet. Probably the majority has done that, or at least has started to think about it, how it goes and in which direction it goes, because without that, we will not able to start the research. And if you have done that, have you already thought how you will, as I said, translate your research questions into the research framework? Can I get some yeses or nos or whatsoever? Have done it, not have done it, in the chat, just in order that where I have to put a little bit more focus. Are you still with us, guys? Grab a mic or yes, write something in the chat, please, just in order to understand. Not yet, okay, but research questions are there. Ideas, okay. Your research plan, yeah. What do you mean with your research plan? Sui, you said you have started your research plan, but you have to have actually your research question. If it's a preliminary research plan, okay, then I'll try to kind of understand that. Yeah, okay. So really, we'll talk about that today. It is really important that we define the research question, and after that, it runs, okay? After we have found it, based on our probably business case or based on our literature review and research gaps, then the things will be running. That will really indicate and inform and actually kind of, give you a clear green light actually to start your research. So if you haven't, doesn't matter. We'll discuss that later, but after you have done it, okay, you have ticked those two things, you have to think of that, actually, that they are linked. So after I have read your research question, I have to be in a stage, let's say, that I can imagine your framework even without seeing it, okay? Because that is how us, let's say, supervisors as well as examiners are thinking and reading. I have an imagination, I have read your title. When I read actually your research questions, I have it probably all. I mean, I don't have your results, but I have actually kind of in my mind a picture of your PhD, of your DBA. So that's why I said quite a tricky thing to be done. So let us go through it just slowly. And as I said, if you have questions, please do actually ask that. Write in the chat or just grab a mic, even better. So the first part will be a little bit about why is the research question essential to the entire research process. That's what I have mentioned right now, I guess. Let us just read one. I liked actually that kind of sentence I read many years ago in one of the papers. The author stated, well-crafted research questions guide the systematic planning of research. See, that's why Suvia said you have started to plan. So I hope you will be close and soon actually defining your at least preliminary research questions, because based on that, you can then start planning your research. Before you have that clear, hey, don't rush into it, okay? First, you have to have your research questions because they're guiding the whole research. And the second sentence says what? Formulating your research questions precisely, we'll talk about that today, enables you to design a study, okay? Design, it's part of planning, definitely, with a good chance of answering them. So once again, you have to have the questions first, then you will design or plan your study, because if you don't do that based on the research questions, there's probably a big chance that you will not be able to answer them, okay? So think of that. Let us talk about that today. Well, why is that so? Because if you go further, what I said here is actually research questions help researchers to focus their research. So I will not be all around the place, but I exactly know what is my question. And in case my question was written in a good way, I have it all in there. As I said, I have it so far all in there that I'll be able to frame my framework. And after I have actually created my framework, everything is totally clear in which direction I have to go. So, as we said, research questions help researchers to focus their research by providing a path through the research as well as at the end through the writing process. Because what you have to do at the end, you have to answer the research questions. So you have to solve them. You have to have the data. Analysis has to show you what you have actually kind of done. And are you able or not to answer the research questions? And that is actually done for the writing process as well. It will guide you how you will actually answer and show the audience or the examiner that you have found actually the proper methodology to answer your questions. Okay, so as we said before, all around the place. So that's exactly here, that based on a well-developed research question, you will not be all around the place. That means all about, but you will be focusing and knowing actually what is the aim and focus of your research, as well as you will be able to plan, should I say here, a specific actually arguable thesis. So that's the idea behind it. You have to, once again, the focus is maybe the nicest word in this slide. ESS, I thought it is the specific objectives that help to guide the study via framework. See, the question is, should I start that? What is first? Is first actually objective, or is first the research question? Is first, what is that, the chicken or the egg? So that's the question. And here I will not discuss that because for me, it's totally clear. For me, first is the research question, because based on the research question, you will be then, sometimes we say, frame the sub-research questions, or many times we go with the objectives. But objectives are not defining the research question. The research question is defining the objectives. I don't know if I have answered the question, which was just posted in the chat. The first is the research question, okay? And then, I mean, research gap or a problem or an issue or whatever you have to fix. But based on the research question, you will get the objectives. So it starts with the research question. As I said, then you can go up to you. Usually we have even, I mean, I'm a fan of one max two research questions for a DBA or PhD. I don't want to have more. I'm always nervous when I see 5 research questions. I mean, my God, who will answer that? You know, there's no go usually if they're written in a proper way. If they're actually just kind of really actually not important ones or not complex enough and stuff like that, yeah. But if they're written in the proper way, that's just too much. So try to stick to 1 max 2, and then based on that, sure, you can develop the objectives. So yeah, let us continue with the research question. Why it is really so important that there's a good research question? Because it will be clearly linked to the overall goal of your thesis. That's clear. I mean, with that question, you will exactly defining what is your actually goal, your aim. Even further, it will probably indicate what is your target population. Because if you in a question is CEOs, if a question is physicians, in a question is teachers, if in a question is, I don't know who, students, it talks already about the context as well as actually the target population. And usually we go with that we are kind of so specific, because that is then about what I want to do. The next one is actually, yeah, guide the appropriate level of aggregation. For example, if I do my study in education, and if I'll be talking about the, let's say, level of a class, level of a course, maybe level of the whole institution, even that will be actually in the research question, or should be in the research question. As we said, the more focused it is, the more clear it is, the better it is. Because based on that, I will go back to the previous question, we'll be able to define actually our objectives. I like this one, maybe even one of the most important ones. It says what? A good research question will, I would say for my students, has to, okay, identify the dependent and independent variables. So the outcome variables, dependent variables, and the predictors, the independent variables. It has to be there. I have to do that, what I said, and I'll be doing later on. I have to see that. When I read the question, I have to know if you want to have something, I don't know, I don't care what it will be. Or maybe you will be playing something with moderation or something like that. Okay, I don't care, but I have to see that in the question. And that's why I said the linkage between the research question and the framework has to be there. And that's exactly that. Identify a good research question will identify the outcome variables, as well as we said, the independent variables. All the constructs will be there. It will determine what type of study is needed as well, because it depends. If you say how, if you say what, even with the first word actually of the question, you will be kind of indicating, do I go rather towards the qualitative? Do I go towards the quantitative, let's say, methodology and things like that? Even that is in the question. As well as what I just mentioned, it will kind of indicate in which direction you will go with your data collection. Will be now qualitative study with maybe just if you mention even a case study or something like that, or if you'll be saying actually, as we said, across the healthcare or across the educational institutions, you're talking about that as well. So you are saying so many things when you are talking about the research question. Helen, there you. Let us talk about it later on, okay? Because that's quite a complex question, Helen. Is it okay? Fair enough? Because if I start with that,
sure.
I'll be staying 1 hour. I'll be staying 1 hour after at least with you, so we can discuss that. Just please keep it for the session after, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Let us go into that. Question, Kumar. It is there to have. Sure you have, because once again, whatever you do, it starts in a way with the research question. Because if you don't have the research question, what are you trying to do if you are doing a review paper? You have to say what is actually your goal, what is your aim, what are you trying to do, what are you searching? Definitely. That is for me, I mean, research question is the thing in a way. Because if you don't have it, what are you trying to do? After, as I said, after I have read your research question, I know so much. I know about everything what's written here, okay? I know it because you have to write it in that way. And your supervisors will have to push you to that. And they will, don't you? I hope so. So for a good research question, as we said, you need to understand, okay, the key concepts. That's what we were talking just a second or 5 seconds ago. Key concepts, here I'm talking actually about the theories. Here I'm talking about the constructs, variables, and things like that. And don't forget, support them. I have here some references, okay? Support them using the references. You know, I've seen many PhDs and many DBAs in the first stage where the research questions were not justified using actually the proper literature. That's not okay. Usually we request and we say research questions have to be justified by references. If that's not there, we'll definitely contest them, don't worry. So you have to understand that. And as we usually go, you know it, your literature review will start with a broad topic, narrow it down, and then you will find the focus topic, and based on that, you will develop your research question. And this research question, as we said, and we talk about, has to be clearly stated. And from here on, we go towards your framework, whatever it is. As we said, if I repeat that once again, if you want to, and based on that, as we'll be saying afterwards, everything is clear what you're trying to do. When we see this, let's say, framework, the methodology is there, everything's actually kind of clear in combination with your research question, because you have mentioned all those things in there. So we know it. If there are any questions, just come, okay? And you can grab the mic as well. Happy actually with answering the questions like that as well. Okay, do we search for literature after our question or frame a proper question? Literature, the last part. Literature guides on how to frame a question. Okay. What we do, in a way, you have an idea about what you, once again, there are two approaches to that in a way. If you are doing a DBA and you have kind of a clear picture, what is an issue, let's say, in an organization, what is an problem in an organization, what you have to fix, what is bothering you, why your processes, not why, but that your processes are not running. That might be that might be kind of, let's say, a clear problem statement. And based on that problem statement, after you have read some of the literature and you've seen that actually nobody has touched that problem statement, or you don't have actually any support or any solutions for it, then you will develop your research question, which will guide then your study. Okay, that's one way. The other way is that you have an idea what you would like to do approximately. Okay, I usually say that kind of working title, and based on that working title, you will start reading your literature. And through the literature, you will be developing actually your way of thinking more and more, and you will be understanding about and around your topic more and more. And based on that, you will be developing the research gaps. That means the areas which haven't been dealt with in regard to your topic. And after you have found that, what hasn't been done, you will develop your research question, the final research question, okay? And when you say that is my final research question, then you start planning actually your research, because based on your research question, you have developed your framework, and the framework informs actually your methodology. Have I complicated, or does it make sense? So for me, there are two approaches. As I said, in case you are a DBA student, then you might have a clear issue, and this gives you, let's say, informs a little bit in which direction you should go. But definitely, you have to read before you frame actually your research question. Exactly, Suvi, that would be, I mean, that's the idea behind it. And you have read, I mean, yeah, sure. And that's the, see, that is why I always say with issues in the organizations and with DBAs, you have to read, because not many times actually you have a new problem. Maybe you can have it, but read. And based on that, you will see that that has been already answered. And I talk about that later on as well. Okay. If I may continue, types of research questions. What did I mention before? That in a way, the research question will even indicate in which direction you go. Because what I'm saying here is both qualitative and quantitative research requires research questions. That's clear, okay? So, and based on the kind or type of the research question, you will be kind of defining what you want to find out. As once again, based on the research question, you will talk about that. And based on that, I will be actually, or you will be actually even knowing, is it about qualitative or quantitative methodology? And sure, based on that, you will actually kind of define what type of research question you want to have as well. Okay, so depending on the question, you will know a lot, and I'll come to that as well, because I'll be trying to show you few questions or how they start, or how we can kind of formulate simple questions just in order to be able to go and discuss a little bit further. And once again, the research question will shape your research design. Okay, so once again, Suvi, I guess you said wait a little bit and then start designing it, okay? Because if you find that some of the things have already been done, then yeah, makes no sense. Find first a really clear, innovative, new research question. So what did we say? Qualitative and quantitative research requires research questions. It's clear. So whenever we go with, let's say, quantitative studies, your research question will tell you, as I have already mentioned, the key study variables, independent, dependent variables will be mentioned. If not the dimensions, but at least the constructs will be definitely have to be mentioned actually. You will be indicating probably the relations there, because if you say, is there a relation between, or how can we improve that or that, or is there, what are the factors influencing or something like that. That is indicating even the relationships. And that's why, as I said, see, if I go towards the framework, I can go even now. I hope I'm not too fast. But if I go here, in the research question, you have your and do we agree on that? And you are talking here about the relationships. Is it now a direct one, for example? Or maybe is it here, I don't know, a mediation, and you go through that. You will be mentioning that even in your question. So even that's there. So you're talking about the relationships, as well as we said, population, because you will be talking probably is now, I don't know, a hospital setting, or is it a government, or is it a nation, or is it whatever it is. Even that's there. So you are getting many things out there. As we said, a research question will include dependent, independent variables, and don't forget, those things have to be measurable. So you will have to talk about things you will be able, because here we are with quantitative studies, okay? You will have to be able to measure those concepts, or those here, our constructs. So that is kind of clear. You will know, you will have to find actually measurement scales, or you have to develop your own ones. And many times the research questions are written in a way that they will be talking about the numbers, kind of, that you will have to quantify that. So it is kind of, you know, how many, is there a relationship, is it significant, and things like that. You can actually go into that direction as well. If we go for and talk about the qualitative studies, you will be definitely in your research question identify kind of, or talk about the phenomenon of interest. If you say, I don't know, how does creativity in the hospital setting influences whatever it is, okay, or something like that. So you are talking about, let's say, creativity and what is influencing. As well as I mentioned in a, let's say, I don't know if you say in a hospital or something like that. Here we are talking about, let's say, where we will be doing that as well. Or how do, I don't know, students react on online learning. It's clear as well. Things like that are given there. And then based on the, let's say, different approaches or methodologies to qualitative traditions, the questions, for example, if you start with how, that's rather a process question, might indicate the approach, how you will be actually kind of dealing with your the methodological approach, how you'll be dealing with your let's say research process. So might be grounded theory, might be yeah, when you will be trying to get actually the meaning questions, then you will go rather phenomenology. And if you'll be asking the descriptive questions, that many times indicates the ethnography. So even that is kind of there. So that, and based on that, definitely you can frame your research framework as well. Now, I just brought few simple questions just in order to help you understanding what I have been talking. Okay, as we said, we have different kind of research question types. And in case you are going with, for example, what are the characteristics of X? As I said, simple questions, okay, would be probably linked to descriptive research. If you go, what are the differences or similarities between X and Y, then we can talk about comparative research. If you are going kind of, you know, into relationships, what is the relationship between variable and blah, 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 could be correlation research, okay? Then if we talk about exploratory research, what are the main factors? What is the role, for example, and things like that. And explanatory research goes a little bit different. Exploratory is rather, usually, many times we'll be saying, is rather a qualitative. When we are explaining stuff, we'll be probably being rather actually close to quantitative? What does have an effect on? What is impact? What are the causes, for example, things like that, okay? So, you know what I want to say? Even based on the type of the question, you will be kind of defining your research type in a way, or as we said, methodology. Or I don't know, if we go with the action research, what are the most effective strategies to improve why, for example, and then you will be using the action research in order to kind of be part of it and discuss with them stuff like that and try to improve in, let's say, 1 or 2 cycles the settings. But as I said, these were kind of simple ones. Usually, you know, the things are going a little bit more complex, and maybe even you will be kind of combining 1 or 2 of those question types together, or as I said, have 2 different questions. You know, for example, you know, many times, if we that's just mixed method. Somebody mentioned this, wanted to say, Sui, if mixed method, yeah, it's kind of trend. I would say this trend, it depends. Once again, it depends how you actually position actually yourself. But yeah, in a mixed method research, you might start with a qualitative study in order to understand things, and then try to kind of prove whether the framework you have kind of created based on the interviews or focus groups or whatsoever is really kind of holding. Then you will go to the next stage and you will go with the quantitative study. And in this case, you will have actually probably first a question which will be dealing with the exploration, and then you will be kind of trying to let's say show that that's true, and you will be trying to explain it. That's now a little bit. Let me go to Suvi. In my field, mixed method research is kind of a trend. Does it make sense to combine quantity and quality research in the same dissertation? Yeah, it does. Let us talk that. I mean, I can talk now as well if you want to. Yeah, sure. It does, but as I said, you have even different sequences. You know, as I said, if you don't have a lot of information about a topic you would like to do research, then first you probably have to understand what are, let's say, the topics in that, what are the areas, what are the themes you might actually research. And for that, you would start with qualitative research in order to understand things. After you have done your, let's say, interviews, after you have analyzed and you derived actually to the different themes, then you say, okay, so the guys were talking about the themes and they were indicating that those relationships are there. Based on that, you can develop your framework. After you have developed your framework, you can go and say, okay, now I will use the quantitative study to validate my framework. Okay? And that would be actually then the second stage. But you can go the vice versa as well. You can actually say, okay, we know all those things. It's totally clear. I will go and check whether that holds true in my setting as well. You do the quantitative study. You don't understand some things. And then you say, oh, why is that so? I would like to know that. So let me talk to the people who will kind of employees, CEOs, whatever it is, politicians, who will try to explain me why that is different as it has been expected. Then that means that the qualitative part, the second part, will try to explain you what, the meaning or what was actually different, what you were not expecting whatsoever in the quantitative part, okay? So, Anna, not sure if I understand correctly, would exploratory question be sort of introduction to, yeah, as I said, it can be but then you have to combine actually both methodologies. Then you have to go with the mixed one, as I said, okay? It can be. And many times we do that, that we kind of first try to understand. And that's in many cases, that's a good PhD. After, I mean, you can actually really go with a good qualitative study. You build a framework, or even, I don't know, something even more, let's say, and that's a PhD when it is done in a proper way. And the research question was complex enough, and you have contributed enough to the literature, then that's perfectly fine. Okay. May I continue with that? I guess we have kind of covered a little bit the types as well. So what I'm trying to say here is actually, see, with that, actually, even how you start, you will many times actually kind of indicate in which direction you go. And definitely that question will tell us where are we going to. Okay, writing a research question. Yeah, consistent with expected standards. That's one of the things, as I said, we have mentioned before, and I'll talk a little bit later about that, how they should be kind of written and framed, but definitely they should not be too simple. They should not be too complex. They should not be whatever I'll be talking in a minute. So expected standards for a DBA, for the PhD, and things like that. What is a proper research? I mean, you have learned and you will learn about that in detail. So what is expected to be at the level of DBA, PhD research? Able to produce clear conclusions. That's really important. So the question should be directed in a way that the answers will give explanation to it, will give actually answer to it, and will not be finally just answering additional new questions. So write it in a way that you will be able to answer it. You know, sometimes you see even the question, and I do ask my student, for example, if she or he comes with an interesting question, I said, theoretically right now, imagine what can be the answer. And whenever they have an idea, then I say, okay, then we can continue because you know what you would like to get. But if they start, you know, a philosophical approach, then I say, we are not there. You are not actually clear in that what you would like to do. Okay. Yeah, but not, I mean, how, what, and why? Yeah, many times it does, but still, you have to get the second part of the sentence correct as well, okay, or question. But yeah, it does indicate in which direction you are going. So at the right level, not too difficult, not too complex, not too simple, not too descriptive. Okay, that goes kind of, you know, with the standards. And you will see after you have read those 100 or I don't know how many journal papers, you will get actually really a good feeling what is a good research question. So what I brought here is actually kind of Goldilocks test. Too big, too small, too hot. Shouldn't be too big because that will be probably difficult and complex. It shouldn't be too small, could be too simple and too descriptive. Don't do that. Too hot, that's a question. You know, sometimes sensitive topics are extremely interesting and good and whatsoever, but the question is, will you be able to do that? Will they actually, your participants be ready to talk to you? Will be definitely sometimes even able to come through the, let's say, ethics approval process and things like that. So think of that. Talk to your supervisor and you will define it actually what's really good. And what we are saying with, or just write, so not those one, but just write. And with just write, we are kind of trying to say that it is just right at this time for this research, as well as for this researcher, that is actually for you and in the setting you are kind of dealing with. So think about that. Don't go too broad. You will not change a word, okay, in one PhD or DBA. You have to find something new. You have to satisfy your examiners, and you have to satisfy actually your standards as well. And that's it. I guess I'm talking quite a lot. I hope I will be okay. I'll speed up a little bit. As we said, now we are with kind of started with writing a research question, okay? So we discussed right now, not too complex, not too short, not too simple and things like that. And as we said, a good research question, we discussed that in the beginning, it's essential to guide your paper, project, or thesis. I hope we are getting that feeling slowly, okay? It is really essential because it guides, it informs kind of everything. As I said, it pinpoints exactly what you want to find out. Because, you know, what did I say? I asked my question, I asked my students, imagine what can be theoretically the answer. So you have to know in exactly, I mean, probably not because you haven't collected the data, but what are theoretical options there? Okay. And through that, gives a clear focus. What are you trying to do? How you are trying to do it? What are you expecting to get out? And through that, actually a clear focus and purpose of the study. So the research question should be, as we discussed, focused on a single problem or issue, okay? That means not too complex, not too big. Focus with one question on one problem, okay? As we said, if you want to have qualitative, quantitative, you can develop kind of two, and they will be kind of each of them covering one of the methodologies, or let's say exploratory and explanatory actually part of it. Another important point, researchable using primary or secondary sources, especially in case you're going with quantitative. You will have actually to find the measurement scales. You will have actually to get somebody who will reply that. On the other side, qualitative, you have to have actually, let's say, interview partners, or if you're going with secondary data, you have to have actually your data sources in order to do that. So once again, don't try to find something what is actually not existing, and you will not actually be able to collect the data. Okay, time frame, practical constraints. I will not talk too much about that. You just think of it. What is your time frame? 2 years, 3 years, or something like that? You don't want to be a student for the next 10 years. I mean, we know some of them, but you probably don't want to do that. So think of that as well. Okay, we were talking about specific enough to answer it thoroughly. So yeah, once again, you will have to dig a little bit deeper into the method, into the topic, and based on the question, as I said, you will define your population or your sample, as well as actually the analysis techniques of the data, and based on that, you will be able to get the kind of let's say answers. But on the other side, we mentioned not too complex, but enough, okay, to be worth, we said before, standards, to be worth of a DBA, of a PhD thesis. That's another thing which is important, okay? Definitely relevant to your field of study or society even more broadly, depends in which direction it goes. But yeah, so think of things like that. And now I will be just presenting maybe some cases which are quite okay and some which are not too okay. Because if you say something like that, how should social networking sites address the harm they cause? If I ask you here, what do we want to do? Where do you want to do? What does it mean, social networking sites? Will you go actually across, I don't know, how many? What do you mean with harm? What is harm? Or why are you saying that it is harm? Maybe it's not a harm. So this question is for me the first attempt, and then let us discuss it and try to develop something which will be more clear. And then if we go to the next one, I hope it will kind of explain what I'm trying to say. So how, even how, you know, what do you mean with that? What do you mean with that? How? Define it clearer. And then you have actually here the answer. For example, using a clear research question. What action, that is how, should social networking sites, for example, MySpace and Facebook, it's clear, those two, take to protect, okay? That could be harm, personal information and privacy. Now we have defined everything. We have defined social network resides, we have defined how, and we have defined harm. That's a good research question. It's totally clear what you want to do. You're searching for actions. You will do that actually based on networking sites, MySpace and Facebook, and you will be dealing with personal information and privacy as a harm. Is it clear? Does it make sense? So in this direction should we slowly go, okay? Then focused, unfocused. What is the effect of the environment from global warming? You know, that I would say, are we trying to change the whole world? What are you trying to research here? I have no idea. What do you mean? Is the effect? Effect? Who, what effect? Environment, global warming, everything extremely broad. Nobody knows in which direction you should go. If we go with the focused one, it says, what is the most significant effect, okay, of glacial melting? Now we have defined the problem, and we have defined, actually, here was effect on the lives of penguins in Antarctica. So we are actually now much closer to that what we want to do. We know where, we know actually who is my, should I say, population, and we are talking about the effect of glacial melting. So those three things are giving me kind of clear indication, and even we have mentioned most significant, okay? So everything's there. Now I can start planning, in a way, my research. Or the next one, a case, how are doctors addressing diabetes in the USA? I mean, yeah, okay. So what do you want to say with that? It's so broad. Nobody will probably, it's so simple. Nobody will probably be able to kind of, you know, spend a lot of time. Probably you Google it and you will probably get the answer. What are kind of the ways of addressing diabetes? Now, if you go a little bit farther and you will say, let us go a little bit deeper to try to understand something else in the same area, you might go, what main environmental, behavior, and genetic factors, so now we are talking about factors we have to find, will predict whether Americans will develop diabetes. Here you can actually do a question mark and stop. And theoretically, if you want to do additional, let's say, and more, you can actually then take a second question, which will be going in a way, how can these commonalities be used to aid the medical community in prevention of the disease? Okay, you have here two questions, but I would say to my students, probably just stick to the first one, or probably stop here. If it goes too fast, let us maybe tackle the second one as well. Okay, I don't know. Have I brought actually some examples which are telling you a little bit more clear how should be done and in which direction should it go? I have no idea. And I hope I'm not too fast, because now you have, oh my God, I'm talking too much. Are you still with me? Okay, so as I said, in case you have questions, just come and ask. So let us finalize actually this topic about writing a research question with the next two sentences. What we have kind of discussed, that is just a little bit for you to think, and using just a few buzzwords maybe linked to the research questions. Should never leave room for ambiguity or interpretation. No, it should be clear. You should tell me what you want to do. I should understand what is the aim. I should understand what answers actually you are kind of expecting. And then let us go a step further. When you are in doubt that those two things are actually a little bit bothering us, then try to narrow it down and make it focus. Now, as much as possible, okay, maybe we can talk about that as well, but definitely you will have it more focused and more narrowed. Okay, and as I mentioned before Google, I said a rule of thumb. If you do some research on internet, and yeah, you will get actually kind of answers to your research questions quite soon, then forget it. I wrote here, just forget it. That's not definitely yours, or you have to go much deeper or more complex or whatsoever. I mean, in a way, you know, sometimes with what are or something like that, or what are the factors or what are the barriers or things like that, that has been done so many times. So you have to think about that. And I like this sentence as well. That's why I brought it. The most successful research, I could write here questions as well, is if you want to, are narrowly focused and carefully defined. Okay, focused, as we said, and narrowly defined, but are important parts of the broad-ranging complex problem. So that's the idea behind it. Be specific, but try to contribute actually to something which is of interest, yeah, for many, let's say, audiences, if you want to. So that's the idea behind it, I hope. Okay. And now the last part, I will see, yeah, it's 6. I need another, let's say, 5 minutes or something like that, maybe max 10. I hope you are allowing me and you will not be disappearing. Let us talk about just kind of now I'll bring some cases which will show you what I'm trying to say, how we have to or how we should link. So that's why I put here the question, are research questions informing your research work? Okay, and that's now for you, that you will try to understand what we have discussed right now, how we can actually then really translate, transform, whatsoever, link actually the research questions into the research framework. And that should be really, I used before the word mirroring, really, it has to be actually strongly linked. What did I put here? A research question is the question, okay? For you, that's really the question of your thesis. That is the question of your research, which has to be actually answered. So that's the most important question. So you have to get it right. Before is bold here. What we are trying to say is that you have to define, you have to write down, you have to develop your research question before starting any of your research. Because as we said, the research question will define what you have to do. So first you have to have the research question. You know, I don't even want to think about different, I mean, we've seen that all, that somebody rushes actually to collect the data, and then based on the data goes backward, okay, and try to develop everything. That's totally wrong. I mean, that's just no go. You cannot do that. That makes just totally no sense. So we have to develop the research question, because I hope we understand now, and you have understood it anyway before, that the research question really guides everything, informs everything. So definitely before, okay? Don't start planning too much before that is kind of clear. Okay, research question resides at the core of systematic investigation. Okay, so I have to know first, and then I will kind of develop my logical and systematic investigation, and helps to clearly define a path of the entire research process, as we said. Because if I use this picture, I mean this picture or the flow chart, as we said, we have kind of a selection of the area, research area and topic. Then we go with the kind of, you know, first working research question, let's say. And then it goes towards your question before. I don't know who asked that. Was it Anna or was it Suvi? Then we go and do the literature review. If we found the answer, that's what you said before. it's definitely no need to study. If there's no answer in the literature for my working research question, then definitely I will develop the final research question, and then I will go once again into the literature in order to see that there's no answer, and that will confirm that that is actually my final research question. And after that, I will develop the research framework based on that, the hypothesis, stuff like that, and then I go with the methodology. Okay, that's the way how we do it. And that's why it is so important that we develop first and final research question. Okay, and that's what that's what I kind of explained right now, that after the research question, we will develop our research framework. And the research framework, why can we do that? Because the research framework will consist of the key constructs. We said that before: independent, dependent, predictors, outcomes, name it whatever you want to, but of the key constructs of your research. Okay, and I mentioned it as well, presumed relationships. And whenever I have the presumed relationships, if I have a box here and I have a box here, and that's my relationship, then I can write theoretically here a hypothesis. And that will then actually clearly indicate what kind of methodology I have to actually take. That's the idea behind it, okay? So, and that is why, as I said, it has to be focused but clear and indicate what we are trying actually really to do. Because it will, as we said, include, it will present the constructs as well actually the relationships between them. And as I have just mentioned, the last sentence maybe before I go to the examples, the research framework is then informing the methodology of your research. And that's then done, okay? I usually say, you know, well, after we have defined the business case, or we have defined the research gaps, clearly supported by the literature, references, then we justify the research question, we develop the framework, and for me, the PhD or the DBA is done. I usually say to students, you will have to sweat a little bit, and you will have to, I don't know, maybe use some handkerchief for your tears, but that's done. We don't have to bother too much anymore. After that's actually there, everything's mostly clear, and it is just the work to be done. Okay, and now I will go to 3 or 2, or I mean even less. I can just explain everything just using 1, maybe, or 2 of my PhDs, where I will tell you where or how we can see the linkage, where we can see actually how the research questions are informing the framework. I brought, I guess, three cases where I have kind of defined the title, the aim, the research question, and here you see the framework actually. The title, Influence of Sustainable Quality Management, Organization Performance. So clearly, title says Sustainable Quality Management, Organization Performance. So I hope and I expect that in the aim, something like that will be there seen as well. The research aims at enhancing understanding how sustainability practices can contribute to overall organizational performance. Perfectly fine. So that's the aim. So let us go to the research question. Research question goes, how does the deployment of sustainability exploitation, and sustainability exploration practices affect organizational performance? Okay, I mean, everybody of you can draw a framework now. Just go to that. Sustainability exploitation, sustainability exploration. We have them here. Okay, so these are sustainability practices, because we mentioned how do sustainability practices, that was here. And we have defined 2 sustainability practices, types of sustainability practices, exploration and exploitation. That is actually the first construct, as we said. Influencing organizational performance. We have it here, organizational performance. And then we defined further that actually the organizational performance will be in 2 phases, kind of output and outcome. And then additionally, we had another research question where we were talking about different contexts. And then we were talking about mediation and stuff like that. But just saying, okay, based on the research question, I guess you were able clearly to define the research framework. If I go further to the next one, I will just talk now about the research questions, okay? Forget about the title and aim and research question, but we said clearly that has to be kind of aligned as well to the framework. If I read, how do asset management practices, similar as before, affect organizational performance? Here we have asset practices, which are subset of risk management, performance assessment, life cycle and policy strategy. Okay, that is all asset management practices. And here we have actually organizational performance, which was kind of set out of sustainability performance and operational performance. So it's totally clear, I guess so. I mean, are we seeing that? Are you following me, or I'm totally kind of wrong? I see it actually in a second, and you should see that as well. I mean, in this case, as I said, we go a little bit deeper, and we didn't actually mention that. But the next objectives here could be that we have defined asset management practices as a set of those 4 dimensions and blah, 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 blah. And based on that, we can actually then develop, if you want, objectives and talk about these subsets. And then the last one, I'll go just to this one, let's say to the research question. What is the impact of organizational motivation to innovate? That will be, okay, mediation or moderation, we'll see, on the relationship between individual creativity component factors. That is actually now 1 construct. And employee creativity is the second factor among employees in Dubai government organization. Okay, that's my population. And if I go to the framework, I will see here that we had 3 questions. 1 question was dealt with this one, and this one, but actually the idea was the same. And that's it. Here we have the first factor. Here we have motivation. Here we have, what's that? Individual creativity component factors. These are for this case here. And then we have employees' creativity, which is here. So everything's here. So that's the idea. That's the idea. And if I go now further, just to make you a little bit more nervous, depends what kind of statistical tools you will be using, but this one is then actually translated into more detail, and something like that using structural equation modeling can come. But as I said, I will not go now into detail, but all of those domain relevant skills, creativity relevant skills, intrinsic task motivation, managerial encouragement, all of those actually are one of those boxes. Okay, so that means with the research question, we have actually defined the framework and even a clearly detailed framework. And that's it. Here I'm stopping today. I don't want to make you even more nervous or whatsoever.
David has his hand up.
But
I
hope we have kind of understood something what I wanted to share with you. Not sure, but as I said, I'll jump now across different things. That's hands-on is for you. You have to do that. We don't have time anymore right now. I mean, but for the ones who would like to stay, as I said, I have time. I'll stay definitely till 7 with you. if anybody has any additional questions, maybe we can discuss something like that or something else, but try to understand that and yeah, try to maybe listen once again what we have discussed or ask me questions right now. I'm perfectly fine with everything what you would like to say.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so what is signified by the lines with the arrows are the actions. And do you go into more detail about defining and how to know which actions are prudent and which actions are not prudent to do during the research?
I mean, see, that will come. That's my answer to your question will be that based on the literature review, you will have to define what do you mean with prudent? What do you mean? Which of those actions should be included and should not be included into the framework? If I do understand your actually question in a proper way. So that's the idea behind it, because I mean, if I go here, I mean, that's why I went actually back, here we have defined actually, let's say, individual creativity components, determinants of work contents, and government regulation and incentives, as you see. And then it is up to you to try to define which ones of those, let's say, constructs you want to include. Because for each of those, you will have to find a clear support, a clear justification why you do expect that all those, let's say, dimensions of those constructs are contributing to aggregativity. Each of those, you will have to write actually a justification, because theoretically at one point, the majority of these ones will be even, if you go with quantitative study, will be even hypotheses. And at that moment, you will have to justify why you think that those hypotheses will be, significant. I don't know if I have answered the question in a way you wanted to have it, or have you asked something else?
Well, I just thought that those lines also, what you're meaning there is you're constantly using theory and method while you're moving from the one subject of what you're trying to study to a result from that sub part of the research. And it's that moving back and forth between theory and method in order to produce a result that is both time consuming but necessary. That's what I was trying to get at.
See, I wouldn't say forth and back, because I usually, as I said, I mean, for me, the how should I say, before the theoretical underpinning is not given for a research question or for a framework, I will not move forward. So I even usually ask my students that they start their research justification with the theory which informs their framework, which informs the actually research question. So for me, we always select quite early in our literature review and, let's say, discussions and considerations, one max two theories which are supporting actually our idea. And when we have that, then I usually say now we have actually mandate that we can actually start thinking of that, because the theory will give us actually those relationships in a way, I mean, the bigger picture, okay? And then you have actually to work deeper into that, what you want to study, what is now your research question, and what is actually your framework finally. So that back and forth is for me rather that you find actually the justification for that, what you have in mind. But while you are reading, you are anyway changing your views in a way, because through that your picture of the study and your picture, and I usually say a picture, or I can use actually the word framework, develops. In the beginning, under your, let's say, working title and working research question, you have kind of an idea what you want to do. But after you have read a lot, you might actually change those things or add or omit some of them.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if that was, I don't know what you have thought or not. Was that kind of clear to your content comment or not? I'm not sure. But
No,
if you have a question.
I've just, having done some research, I just am, I'm personally fascinated with that process, and becoming more aware of the different mental activities that have to go in that process of producing results with conscious mental activity that's not like daily activity, but it requires mental effort beyond just like, you know, daily activities. It requires extra effort to hold to both the theory you've chosen and the methods and the techniques and the tools, and it's that kind of rigor that I'm talking about.
I agree. I agree. It is something different, probably, what we have been used to or what we are usually used to. And at one point, you, how should I say, I don't want to simplify things, but at one point you get it. And then that's the way how you usually work. And, you know, I don't want to go now into discussion what I really enjoy and what I really see as the biggest contribution of the PhD and DBA students, but that is how they grow, and they don't even see it. But we do, because we know how or what we discussed, let's say, during the first few months or during the first year, and what they have reached actually in their discussion knowledge, way of thinking and stuff like that, actually after 3 or 4 years. And that's for me the biggest, you know, how should I say, motivation and actually, yeah, enjoyment actually of the things I'm doing. Just that.
So have you advised other professors about how to advise PhD students?
I will not, I mean, definitely, if I want to start this topic right now, then I will stop.
Sorry, I don't want to dominate the discussion.
I'll stop. I'll stop recording anyway. It's okay, let us do that. Okay, let us discuss further, as I said, but I'll stop the recording now and just say thanks for all of you being with us. And I hope we will see you soon again. Okay, bye-bye.